Hello and welcome to another episode of Casual Friday. I'm here with the Duck. We will be discussing Bitcoin, ETH, and altcoins at these fascinating prices. Don, I feel like I'm in one of those old man Alzheimer type movies where they just give Grandpa the same newspaper for like 50 days in a row. And he's like, oh, look, BTC's at 29K. Fucking hell, I wonder what comes next. And it's been like 50 years since that happened. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm stuck in one of those Groundhog Day loops. But before that, we're brought to you by Woo. As always, check them out via the links in the description. With any trading exchange or counterparty, be it a lender or a derivatives platform, whatever it may be, do not keep any more funds there than you need for trading. It's not a bank, so apply that risk management to wherever you trade. Thank you to them for supporting the show. Fun stuff coming as they sort of move away from the PFOF model and more towards a standard, market making type of exchange. So be on the lookout for those, and there'll be some fun competitions and other stuff to go with it. We enjoy working with them. When people send us a DM about feedback or with feature requests, we just forward that to the team and good stuff gets done. So thank you to them. Leave a like on the video if you enjoy Casual Fridays. Even some, we continue to make this show despite the market not being particularly kind as far as conditions go. But we're going to try again this week, Don. So here we are. What do you think? How many times have you flip-flopped in this range?
0. Yeah, but I mean, I've seen a lot of people flip-flop, honestly. It's been like the thing to do every time you have like a green candle or like two. The
Where have you
sentiment
seen
kind of
two, bro?
you wouldn't believe it, but there's 2 daily candles in a row that were green just
That's
like
true.
3 days ago. But yeah, people are kind of getting chopped up left, right, and center. Someone commented last week, and I was like, I'm saying this too much, and now I'm leaning
left, right,
into
and
it.
center. Yeah, I saw
Yes.
that part. Dude, nothing will make you more self-conscious than being a host on Technical Roundup. The little
Dude.
intricacies and nuances that people bring out are painful. Like, I've tried to stop saying at face value, and I can't. I keep saying it, and every time I do, I feel this sense of unjustified moral guilt. So yeah,
Oh
it's
yeah,
not
it
good.
feels like you stab every time. Like you say it, and then you're like, fuck.
I failed. Yeah.
And then you do it again. It's a
And then you
struggle.
keep doing it left, right, and center.
Yeah, it's this weird thing where you kind of get to know how you speak because you
Yes.
don't really notice a whole lot. Like if you don't record it, I think like everyone has manners of speech that they use all the time, but they don't even know it themselves. At least that's for me. Like there's so many words that people have kind of like been commenting on, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Like honestly, and left, right, and center. For me, it's what at face value, and there's another one. God, I'm
Yeah.
sure they'll let me know in the comments now, won't they?
Oh
Like,
yes.
with that in mind, listen, I'm gonna save us again the whole charade of going through the high time frames and discussing, what every single level means. I'll rephrase, or rather repeat, the question from last week, which is, what do you think is the most relevant time frame, and what is it showing?
I think it's still the weekly, and it's actually less good than last week, and last week was not that good. Let's say it that way.
It's a very long way of saying it's shit, but I commend you for the effort, Don.
Yeah, I'm trying, dude. I'm trying. But no, it's I think it's the weekly, and I think the one level to watch basically is 29.5 to 29.8, like that kind of whole area. That's where we've been getting rejected from, and I don't really see a point in being too bullish unless we trade above there, because that's the closest level that we have. Like it's very, very close to price, and it's the first indication that we actually have some strength going on. So far we have none of that, right? In my opinion anyway.
The
We
candle's
have
green, Don. What do you mean?
Yeah, but the candle is green into a bearish retest of that candle right now. And so yeah, technically bearish retest right now if you don't close back above. That said, it's the same for breakouts and breakdowns. I don't like immediate retests, right? So I'm not like expecting this to just completely teleport downwards next week, but it needs to do something bullish for me to even consider getting long, just because of how choppy it is, right? I've, like I said at the beginning of the show, like I've seen a lot of people get chopped up, and technically price hasn't really moved that much, right? Like we have these 1 or 2% days, and people get excited, and and then they lose a bunch of money because they lever up into like bearish retests, or they lever up because they think the breakdown is coming, and then you get these bearish retests. And I don't think that's a good way to trade. Makes more sense to just give it some time. At least let it do like one bullish thing before you get bullish. Or yeah, I mean, the bearish side.
You were going to say one bearish thing, but then you're like, oh, fuck, it's at resistance now.
Yeah, because the thing is, the bearish side is a little bit more justifiable, I think, here, because technically we are at resistance, and we have been weak given the headlines that we've been having. They've turned a little bit for the worse in the last week, I think, last 2 weeks, where we've gotten a little bit less good news, but still, yeah, it's been a drag, and it's not been stopping. So I don't think any other time frame, like the daily's been working good, but it's not as important as the weekly.
Yeah, I was going to say the daily was probably the only other reasonable candidate for this, based on that pre-breakdown candle that we've been discussing since the breakdown, and that's been resistance twice now. Do you think if the market doesn't roll over here and sort of, grinds into a higher low or consolidates and has a third attempt at resistance, that would be one of those early indications that, okay, it doesn't look as bad as maybe the weekly might suggest?
Yeah, if we do go for it again, I think at that point, you could take an early, like, as dumb as it sounds, like, depending on how we rally into 29.8, 30K, it might be wise to look for breakout longs or / just long resistance. But I want to see the weekly close before. So for me, that's not necessarily something that I'm going to do, just because of how low the volumes have been and how choppy the market has been. But if we go back there again, I could see it just rally through. So I think there's a few bullish arguments to be made too at this point. One is that we just haven't broken down. And I've been making the argument that the S&P has been super strong and Bitcoin's just been weak, and that's been true for the last months. But now we have a little bit of a different situation where the S&P's actually been struggling a little bit. It's still up a shitload, but we've had like almost, I mean, a little bit more than a week of downside, and Bitcoin's still holding somewhat, right? I mean, the weekly candle on Bitcoin is green. The weekly candle on the S&P is red. That's the first time that's happened in a long time.
Decoupling, send it.
Yeah, but we've decoupled before too to the upside, and it's not significant enough for me to be like taking it as a signal. So yeah, I think there's like a few very weak bullish arguments, and there's a few decently weak bearish arguments, and the market is just not moving, and it doesn't really look like it wants to anyway. Like I could see this continue for the next half a year.
Oh god,
be
not at 29 though. Can we at least go to 28.9 or something? Like, I mean, yeah, it is impressive in a very sad way how vol has just kept drifting lower, because now we have S&P volatility that hasn't sort of pushed vols higher. We've also had headlines, ETF delay, PayPal stablecoin, whatever nonsense you have, also just hasn't been working. It seems immune to moving at this point.
Oh yeah, and this is bullish and bearish news, right? Like the PayPal news, you could back when the market was trading decently, that would have pushed price up.
Sure.
Like PayPal just being like, oh, we want to get into the stablecoin game, as like doesn't really have to do anything with Bitcoin or ETH or any of the other coins. Just that there's interest from PayPal would have pushed the market up like 10%.
Adoption, right?
Yes, but that's not happening. And then you get the ETF delay. Now it's not necessarily like a big surprise, but also no price movement really. Like we had a little bit of price movement, but nothing that we wouldn't otherwise get anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like these daily candles, literally like 1 or 2% moves.
Ridiculous, honestly.
And that's Bitcoin when the S&P is trading like crazy, and some of the stocks are flying and some of them are dumping. So you have enough volatility elsewhere, right? And crypto's just been going down and down and down. And now I see people on Twitter basically be like, oh, there's a new coin launching, it should go to $1 million market cap in no time. And I'm like, that this is truly down bad, right? Back in the day, there was like a gentleman's agreement that you don't chill anything below like 100 million market cap. Now we're like excited, or like some people on Twitter anyway are excited for the coin or the bags that they bought reaching 1 million market cap. It's a different beast, and it's funny because that's at 30K, right? Like 30K is the prices that we dreamed about back in 2017, but apparently everything's still down bad. And I mean, the money to be made has been getting less and less as a volume just dries up, right? Like there's a few plays to be had, but it's very far, very few and far between. No, what's the saying? How do you say it?
Yeah, far and few between, I think.
Oh shit!
I thought you were
nailed
going to
it.
say far out on the risk curve, which is also true.
Yeah, both of them. And it's just like I see a bunch of people. This is also like I have so many pet peeves right now. Like people chilling like 100K to a million market cap coins. Obviously, those are gonna move if you mention it on Twitter, right? But also then people on Twitter being like, "Oh yeah, there's enough opportunity if you're just willing to grab it," and I'm like, this is kind of a tough argument to make, honestly. There is like 10 coins that are moving in a week at best, and those are moving because people are chilling them on social media, not necessarily because there's much interest anywhere, right? So I'm struggling with this whole narrative that this is a great market to trade, because I just don't think so. But maybe it's just I don't have edge, so maybe it's just me being a sideline coper. But
yeah, you've missed out on so much, Don. You must be seething and pounding sand. I think you make an interesting point as far as sort of those opportunities and how to gauge them. Because, if the majors are moving, or like if BTC, ETH, high cap alts are moving, I think there's a lot less asymmetry and therefore potentially sort of better trading opportunities in those than if someone spins up a shitcoin with their friends, buy it super early, then shill it on Twitter, and then you try to catch a piece of that trade. I think your odds of getting screwed on that second trade are much higher than your odds of getting screwed on the first one. And so a lot of the so-called opportunities that are being bandied around at the moment are built in, I think, with a lot more risk than you would get in a market that's moving properly among the more liquid, higher cap stuff.
Yeah,
but the again, people could be cope.
Yeah, could be. But then again, like the people that are talking like that are the ones that hold the reins, right? Like if you're the one that chills the coin, you can say, hey, there's been little risk and a lot of upside, because basically people are buying after you and you're just sending them into the coin that you think is going to have a narrative. And maybe that coin is going to run for a day or 2 or 3, or maybe if you chill a short or whatever, it's going to dump for 1 or 2 or 3 days. But that's not necessarily because you just nailed the market. It's just because there's no one that's willing to trade it, and if you have enough people that are willing to throw their money at it or short it, you're going to have temporary price movements just based off of that. So I think it's a little bit of an odd way to look at markets, right? Like if you can move the market, to then say like, hey, the market is super easy right now and there's so much opportunity, seems a little bit I don't know. It seems a little bit dishonest to me. But like I said, maybe it's just me not understanding the current meta, which could honestly be true.
Sure. I mean, leave us a comment if you've been actively trading in the last 2 to 3 weeks. Let us know how it's been, where your trades have been. Have you been dumped on? What does the asymmetry of those assets look like? We'd be keen to know. Otherwise, going back to BTC very shortly, I guess there's not a whole lot else to do. So weekly needs to be rescued if it's going to give you some semblance of a bullish argument above, like ideally 29.9 on the weekly, but I guess even 29.3 would be a starting point. If you're not a weekly time frame enjoyer, then the pre-breakdown cluster at 30K on the daily still seems to be strong. You could carve out a range low basically on the wick. I sort of discussed it on Monday markets, that sort of triple spike swing low looking thing. And then you have a massively volatile range between 28.8 and 29.8 of about 3 to 4%. From extreme to extreme without fees.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
If that tickles your fancy, that's wonderful. But otherwise, I think more of the same, Don. And I also think the sort of roadmap of sorts that we discussed is still pretty tenable from last week. If memory serves correctly, it was essentially 30K as the midterm pivot, some version of above, what was it? Was it 30.6-ish? as the potential breakout catalyst. And as far as lower down, it sort of starts at around 27.4, 27-ish, depending on whether you draw from the daily or the weekly. I think that's what we discussed last week. And I mean, it's been working for the time being. So no reason to abandon that framework for now.
And the problem that we have right now, right? Like even if there's Bitcoin strength, we talked about the S&P being so strong. That's kind of like stopped being as strong, and I could see that pull back a little. We talked about this last week too, right?
Break in market structure on the daily time frame,
yeah, and we were basically last week it was only mode, and we talked about it maybe retesting monthly support back at like 4.3k to like 4.4. It's done a little bit of that. It's done a little bit of that pullback, but there's still a little bit more room to go. And if we set a lower high here, then you have a big problem in the crypto markets as well, right? So right now it's really hard to formulate a trade that is not gonna get you wrecked, just based on how the traditional markets look like, just based on how the volumes look like, the general interest in crypto, like all of it is just kind of like garbage. So yeah, like whenever you have zero volume on this thing, it's easy to push it like up a little and down a little. You're gonna get these 1 or 2% spikes, and it's easy to kind of lose sight of how it actually looks like, right? Because you just zoom in more and more and more, and you kind of miss that the weekly, literally, like those are some of the smallest candles we've seen in a long time. And that needs to resolve before, like at the moment you get volume back, we can decouple from the S&P, we can show strength or like weakness, whatever. But with this kind of shitty volume, it's pretty hard to trust anything, I think. Like any move up or down that isn't on like actual trading volume, it's just gonna be fake, most likely.
So. Yeah, it's been rough. I mean, two notes on that. First is it would really help if the S&P could be helpful for once. It seems like it just acts as an obstacle, regardless of market direction. Like either it's a drag or we have to worry about it because it's high time frame resistance, or if it is going up, the correlations don't spill over into crypto. It's been a total pain in the ass. And the second point is regarding sort of fees, edge, trading in low volume conditions, all those things you mentioned. I think if people took a much larger zoomed out view of their lifetime crypto P&L, it probably the best periods probably correlate very highly with two things. One is some definition of trend, and two is some definition of volatility, however measured, right? And especially given you can take a very generic description and say that most people have made most of their money in the uptrend, and then you sort of break it down into trend plus volatility, and you look at the market right now, it's got neither trend nor volatility. So like historically, compared to like how the average crypto person makes the disproportionately vast majority of their money, neither of those preconditions exist at the moment, and that's just the reality of it. I think people aren't terribly willing to be adaptable with their trading systems, or rather switch them off in their head. There is this, I think, almost a routine and a ritual to it, that you wake up and you draw your support resistance levels, you draw 3 supports and 4 resistances in the 2% range, and then you make 6 different trading plans as to whether it goes up or down or how you're going to take advantage of it. And then if you really zoom out and ask yourself, what the fuck am I doing? What is actually going on? You realize just how inappropriate that type of high frequency trading, well, high frequency in discretionary terms, trading approach is in the current conditions. I think a lot of it is almost Pavlovian, right? You have to wake up, what's the nearest support, what's the nearest resistance, how do I trade them? But sometimes you can just opt out, go live off grid, whatever the equivalent would be, because this has been pretty rough. And even as we outlined, if you caught like pretty much wick to wick without fees, we're talking 3-4% on BTC at most, and that's just like at a certain point you have to be able to say this isn't worth it, I'll come back later. And it seems like the whole market basically agreed, because looking at these volumes and volatility expectations, it's a bit of a ghost town, honestly. Do you think the usual argument that surrounds low volatility environments, that essentially when it breaks it's going to keep going, do you think that applies to the current context? So like if the vol resolves to the upside, it's probably going to go beyond the immediate trouble area of 30ish and go much higher. Similarly, if the vol resolves to the downside, that it's going to keep going significantly lower than the nearby support level? I don't know if that question makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But the problem that we have right now, and that we've been having, like you aptly put just a few moments ago, is that the S&P's just kind of been cucking us. And I think that's going to continue just because we are in such an interesting macro environment, as stupid as that sounds.
Oh God,
right?
we're back. We're back to the macro podcast.
Oh yes.
I wasn't ready. We are in unprecedented macro times. Jesus.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, we had a bunch of people talk about macro when it really they shouldn't have, right? Like, do you remember back at the bottom at like 15, 16K, where everyone was like, oh, macro is so bad, you cannot long, you shouldn't be buying, whatever.
Yeah, that was me. So what?
Yeah, but like that was times, when I think there was great opportunity on both like the traditional markets. Now in hindsight, obviously easier said than it was back then in actuality. But I feel like barely anyone is like talking about macro anymore, right? And I think we are kind of in times where trading is just going to become tough because there's just bigger picture stuff going on that we're going to have to deal with. There's a bunch of geopolitics at play right now that is kind of screwing us all over. And that's going to be a thing that I think could potentially just make this into a very, very boring trading period. It can either make it so that we just nuke and pump like crazy, or it can just make it like very boring. And I think for now it's gonna stay boring. And when you like, if you see something like COVID-esque in a response from governments again, I mean, just gig along it again. But until then, it's a little bit of a stretch. Like, I want to see big strength and that crypto specific before I'm actually like too interested, because I think the trade is done. And something that I think is just not really spoken about enough is that most like really good traders that like I talk to and that I kind of observe, they make their money in like a couple days a year, right? And then they're done with it. Like they try to keep that money that they made during those days the rest of the year, and in the next year they're looking for something again, right? Like, generally speaking, your P&L is more likely than not gonna go sideways until you have this one big break, and then it goes up quite a bit, and then it goes sideways / bleeds out again just based on the fees, right? And that's, I've seen a lot of kind of like professional traders trade crypto in the last few years, and most people's curves, like P&L curves, actually look somewhat similar, like the ones that stay around, right? The ones that don't stay around, they basically are in a trade all the time, and then you have these wild swings where it just goes up and then it goes completely down and goes up again, and sometimes they make like 500% and then they give it all back. But I think it's more important to kind of focus on the big opportunities that you have and then try to maximize those and stay away from the market as much as you can / limit losses when it's just not in your favor. And the cool thing about crypto is that you have a lot of these periods of times where the market goes crazy, where you can make outsized returns. And I think most people would be better off just focusing on those rare periods of time where trading is actually something that is more likely not gonna make you money, instead of trading during the times where it's just more likely than not is gonna lose you money. It's harder, like, it's easy to say and it's harder to do. Like, I struggle with it sometimes too. Like, I'm sitting at the computer, I'm like, this looks like this 1 hour time frame, or like, usually not, but this daily time frame looks quite nice. I want to take a trade, and then I have to kind of be like, hey, we've made a plan, as in me and my alter ego.
The voices in your head, yeah.
Yeah, and we have that plan for a reason, right? And then I'm like, okay, has anything significantly changed? Or why do I like, does this have like this daily time frame? Does this have an actual impact on my higher time frame vision / like ideas? And if it's not the case, and like I said, if volumes are this low, more likely than not, it's just not going to be a good trade. And that's kind of how I try to avoid just bleeding out money while I don't have to. But yeah, it's it's a little bit of a game of trying to stay well connected enough to the market that you can take advantage of the crazy times, but also staying far away enough from the market that you can kind of actually keep yourself from doing dumb shit.
Yeah, and to avoid tunnel vision as well in
Yeah,
doing
exactly.
so, right? I think at one point, I mean, I agree with all of that, and especially with how those P&L curves look, especially in crypto. If you like really zoom out and look at lifetime, you know, those time windows which have the largest impact are like hilariously small. Everything else is just like chop, churn, bleed, getting hacked, whatever. Um, do you recall on one of these casual Fridays we talked about like the anatomy of how the market got here, and it was just like 5 or 6 big days, and everything else is garbage. That's kind of a good way to contextualize your comments as well. You know, like you might think, oh, price doubled. There must have been so many opportunities from like, you know, the lows to how we got here, or, you know, from 15 to 30, whereas it's just like a handful of days out of everything. So, you know, it's those days where you should be active at your desk trading, or the follow-up days after one of those days. But the majority of it, by definition, has been chop, even on the way up. Let alone now. I mean, good lord.
Yeah.
Also, and bearish duck I can tolerate, but macro duck I don't think. Listen, I've got the psychological wherewithal to sit through it. It's been too long, Don. I'm not sure.
Oh, I mean, I'm not gonna pretend like I'm any good in the macro picture, but I can realize, you know, like sometimes you can realize that conditions are just not that great. And I feel like that's the case right now, but I could be completely wrong. And the good thing is, right, like a lot of people been kind of commenting like, hey, you're gonna change your mind in a week or two anyway. And I think that's a good thing, right? Like if this market changes significantly, you're gonna hear me say completely different things in a week's time if there's just a little bit of strength, right? And I think that's also important, where it's just like you have strong opinions, right? And I do have those, but you have to also be able to be like, okay, I mean, it's just not going to happen, and this is time to flip, right? But that time hasn't come yet for me anyway. Like for now, I'm gonna remain bearish, like leaning bearish. I don't have any short positions open or anything, but I'm just not in the market, and I don't think it's wise to do too much. And that's me being as bearish as I'm gonna be. Like I'm not gonna short anymore. Yeah, they won't trap me. Yeah.
I think one of the worst things you can do is trade with significant size and frequency if you don't have strong views on the market, because ideally your strong views are derived from your edge.
Yes.
And, you know, so it makes sense that you go from one strong view to the other, because you're getting presumably strong signals from profitable trading systems. But if you've got no view, presumably one can infer that therefore your system isn't offering you up any, you know, plus EV, high EV setups. And so if you're sat there clicking with like no conviction, then that in itself is problematic. Because, you know, the assumption there is you can have a strong view one way, and if you flip, that's just another sort of high conviction signal, which is still as useful if it's all coming from like a profitable trading system or a system that makes sense. But if your system isn't saying anything, and you're just sat there clicking and flip flopping based on weak information, information, that just seems like a wonderful way to grind out your trading account. Like for me, it's essentially at this point, it's like a switch. Like I either fully care about the market and I'm quote unquote really invested in a specific setup or the next move, or I have complete apathy. You know, this like half-assedness, like, oh, you know, there's a bit of a spike here, it might go up 1% to the next level. Periodically, I'll find really short-term intraday stuff interesting, but like bigger picture, especially for a weekly show and for like swing trades, which make up the majority of my punts, I just simply don't dabble in that kind of low conviction, low rotation type of stuff. That's not to say it's not valuable at all. I think definitely in the learning stage, or when you're trying to find out what kind of trading style makes sense for you, how you view the market, or you just want to kind of accrue screen time, like a much higher frequency and a greater presence, if you will, makes a lot of sense. But once you know what works, everything that's not that should basically not be on your radar. Unless, of course, you've got like a separate mandate to look for new ideas, etc. But the broader point is, once you know what you're doing, you're either doing that thing or you're waiting/doing nothing. And I think diddling in the middle, as far as the conviction spectrum goes, is a great way to just, erode your account balance.
Yeah, well said. I mean, it's
But I take 0 trades a year, so fuck me, I guess. I had to throw that one out there. ETH. Is it worth it? Should we just skip this thing?
It's even worse than Bitcoin.
Yeah. Nothing happened. Nothing is going to happen. Nothing is ever going to happen.
It's wild. I mean, just throw on the ETH BTC weekly pair and then
let's do that. Because the USD pair, it's just insulting.
I mean, the ETH BTC pair is also insulting.
Oh god, that's actually worse than I thought. Good lord.
I mean, there's just nothing there, right? Could go up, could go down. Like, have fun trading this. Like,
what is this weekly range? Is it like 3%? You know, with the body to body, roughly.
Yeah,
3 to 5% 2-month range in ETH BTC.
Yep.
Good lord, the state of things. I've got one to beat you on that as far as the misery index. BNB USD weekly.
Oh yes.
Try how are them apples or whatever the idiom is.
I mean, how many launch pads do they want to launch to risky this thing? Dude, it's been so comical to see. Like, BNB is chilling at support, and then you look on the Binance Twitter, and they have like one after the other, like just trying to make this thing hold support.
No, Don, it's just a good time for launch pads. You know, there's a lot of interest in the market and people are looking for new opportunities. It makes sense to be spamming launch pads. What do you mean?
Oh yeah, especially given there's like basically zero VC money flowing around anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you have like complete garbage coins with like 1 million market caps being offered somewhere, and that's the most interesting the market gets anywhere. Obviously, everyone wants to launch on the launch pads right now. That's just the way it goes, huh?
That's how the market looks.
But yeah, it's a little bit absurd. I honestly don't even want to make a call on where this is gonna go. But typically, when you have like a nuke like this, and then you go sideways without a bounce in this long like of a period, I'd be surprised if this didn't go down just in general.
Yeah, but it can't go down too much because then we're all fucked.
Oh yeah, that's the thing.
So I reckon, you know, it reminds me of some of those comments around Luna being like, please do whatever legal or illegal things in order to defend the peg. That's how I feel about 220-ish BNB.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you just look out for the next support below this one, you find it basically, I mean, at $50, which is not great.
Classic TA brain, but yeah, I agree.
I don't think we're ever like, unless like if you're like, oh, I'm gonna just bid $50. I think that's the most moronic trade that you could take. Like, because if it goes there, you're fucked. Then it's probably like, if it goes to 50, it's probably gonna go to 0. And otherwise, it's never gonna go there, right? Like, if anything, I think BNB like at 100 ish, like that's as low as I would be. Like, even like if I was a Binance fan, let's preface it that way, because I'm never gonna buy BNB myself, right? But if I like Binance, $100 is as low as I would buy this, because if it goes much lower than that, I think it's just gone. Now, Binance being gone will obviously be quite terrible for the space, at least price wise. So I'm not saying it's going to happen or not. I have no idea. I don't have any insider information. But I think they're gonna get in trouble with some of the 3-letter agencies out of America. That's pretty much for certain, I think, at this point. But we'll see how that turns out. If it's just gonna be them having to pay a little bit of money, or worse, I don't know.
That'd be great if we get a slap on the wrist and then a full send. That would be wonderful.
Yes.
I don't know exactly where that rests on the spectrum of probabilities. Fairly low, I think. But it would be the best resolution, you know, especially given some of the allegations. But yeah, it's one of those look out below and try not to think too much about it, I think, when it comes to this 200-ish, 220 level for BNB. But I also don't want to buy it. Like, I'm not sure what the setup there is. It would essentially be that the market is entirely wrong about, you know, their legal position. But even if you're right about that, if some sort of headline comes out, it's probably at least going to spike a bit lower than where it is now, right? And sort of poke below the range and expand a little bit and see who's hanging out. So it's one of those scenarios where even if you're right that the market is overly pessimistic about BNB, your trade can still get fucked if you structure it in the wrong way. So that's I mean, the only argument I could see for the BNB kind of long trade would be if they get a slap on the wrist and that news drops in the initial headline, DOJ Binance, and the market flushes lower, like significantly, and then it, in the fine print, if you will, turns out to be a nothing burger, and that the panic selling was an overreaction upon seeing the words DOJ and Binance together, that just about I can see a case for being long that. But everything else, like outright buying Launchpad support, seems a bit shit to me. Buying $50 or whatever, yeah, that's like, those are existential price levels where the odds of recovery, if it goes anywhere near that, in order for it to get there, would have to be fucked completely anyway, so you don't want to be a buyer of that thing. So it seems to me the only reasonable middle ground is either the classic TA meme of buy strength later somewhere once all of this fucks off, or hope for a headline that ends up being a nothing burger, but for that to be initially mispriced by the market. Do you think it's a dumb idea?
No, I 100% agree. The thing is with like these kind of like exchange coins in general, I struggle to make a good kind of argument for it, given that crypto is in the mainstream now, right? Like we have just in general lawmakers looking into crypto, and like it's pretty tough to structure exchange coins in a way where they don't just completely look like a security. So I just, in general, I'm just gonna stay away. Like you're not gonna see me buy exchange coins. I might be like good upside, and in general, like having a piece in an exchange, that's like having like selling the shovels during the gold rush, right? Like that's what you want. But I don't know if coins are the right approach to that. Like I
Launchpads
struggle
are
with
better.
it.
There's the
Yeah,
solution.
but that's just kind of me, and this could be me 100 IQing it, but you're not gonna like see me do that. Like if anything, like for example, coin as in Coinbase stock, like
Right.
That's something that I could see myself be like, oh, I want to have a little bit of that. Makes sense. The coins themselves, I wish it was otherwise, right? But not really.
Yeah, but which is going to get manipulated higher if the market cycles down?
Oh, I mean, you're gonna make more money in the ones that is more risky, right?
Right. Classic
So
risk premium.
yeah,
I don't know. It seems like in the past that there's, in terms of betting on exchange tokens, I feel like it's one of those where you do it either early in the exchange's life or early in the sort of cycle's life, and everything in between is like a bit shit for swings.
yeah.
Especially now
Because
that BNB isn't like kind of technically an exchange token, right? It's more
yeah,
like a BSC token. So that adds a layer of kind of complexity there as well.
yeah, and I mean, you always have like, no matter like calling it as a non-exchange token seems kind of odd to me, because it clearly still is, right? Like it's just that, just kind of trying to make it so it doesn't look like one.
Sorry, that's FUD for ignore. Keep building.
Yeah, but in general, like there's always risk of, like, we've had so many exchanges blow up, right? Like holding exchange tokens, you always have the risk of them just straight up going to zero. You don't have that risk by holding Bitcoin. So like you have to factor that into your kind of risk reward calculations. Does it make sense? Because the risk is literally it going to zero. But then again, if you have your money on an exchange all the time, right? As in like you just use any exchange as a bank, you also have that risk. So might be worthwhile thinking about all of that.
Or
And just,
not. Don't fucking
or
mid
not.
curve. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, listen, Don, it might go to zero, but I'll get 20 bips off my fees or whatever. So it's calm. It's worth it.
No, totally worth it.
Yeah. Honestly, other altcoins have been wholly uninteresting.
Oh yeah.
I don't even know where to look, to be honest. I clicked through this watch list before the show and I just never want to look at it again.
No.
It's either just been choppy or weak, really. I mean, Sheeb a little bit has been that there's relative strength there, but I think that's with some presumed upcoming news, some Shibarium thing. Can't believe that's a real sentence. So this is one of those. Yeah. So this is one of those cases where you use like a Coinalyze or a Velo or some other tracker to look at the biggest open interest changes and price changes in altcoins. And if you're going to be trading short, because the rotations don't last for more than like a fucking week, it seems, with some exceptions. So you're gonna want to lower the basically look back period on those tools and look at the last like 24, 48 hours in terms of price and open interest changes. And then if you're going to trade those alts, trade them for like 0 to 2 days. And by then the rotation is probably going to be done. And, we're off to the next thing. That to me seems the only plausible, and even that's a bit tentative, but the only plausible sort of game available with high cap altcoins is just sort of mercenary, super short term positioning. Everything else seems unavailable, for lack of a better term. That was the other one, for lack of a better term. I'm always lacking better terms. So it's at face value and for lack of a better term.
Oh, yeah.
Verbal ticks.
I have many more.
Yeah, many more. But it's fine. We're both speaking our second language, right? So
true.
It's
now
very
you
rude and disrespectful that people do this way with this amount of scrutiny.
Oh, but now you make me look bad because your English is significant.
It's fine. I live here, so
true.
It's fine. Any alt comments from you, Don? DonAlt, I expect you to come with the goods every single week, and for 6 years now you've been disappointing me, but I'm hoping maybe this week is the week.
No, I just don't see anything. Like I'm struggling to like see anything interesting. Like I was looking at Pepe. I've seen that be mentioned a couple times on social media.
Yeah.
But that is pretty fucking dead. Like that's just, I don't know. We've had months of downside, and then we had two green days 4 days ago, and that's it. And now it's going sideways again. If that's how stuff trades, that's just, I don't know. There's really not that much to talk about. Like I said, there's a few coins and a few things and a few narratives that are moving, right? Yeah. We had the Telegram bots, all that kind of stuff, but it's all pretty like low market cap, low
on-chain,
on-chain stuff, which I think just isn't really in the scope of this show.
Agreed.
Like I can go out and chill like low market cap stuff on Twitter, and get some interest in whatever coin, and then it's gonna do something more likely than not. But I would rather just not. Like that just doesn't seem ethical or worthwhile to me. But there's obviously differences also in depending on how big your account is, right? Like I don't know, like if someone tweets about a 1 million market cap coin with 500,000 followers, like that's the thing that I think is clearly just something that you shouldn't be doing. If you do the same with 5,000 followers, I think it's completely legit. Do whatever you want. So yeah.
I mean, it seems like do whatever you want is the going mantra, and no one cares anymore.
It's gone completely downhill.
Like replay last week's show all over again. We had that whole 20-minute segment about giving up. We're like fully black-pilled at this point.
Yes.
But it makes sense. I mean, look, if the majors aren't moving, I think people's barometer, ethical barometer, if you will, is going to adjust. And, a lot of the time at this point, I think that they consciously know that there's a lot of asymmetry baked into the low caps that they're being chilled. But then if I'm a trader in that scenario, think, okay, this guy's got a lot of followers. He's tweeting this now. This is going to have market impact. He's already going to be in profit, but there's a good chance I can still dump on his followers who join in late / are bad at trading. So you kind of find an edge case there. That's me being super charitable and trying to, give the benefit of the doubt. But I think that could be part of the reason why people don't care anymore. Because the market is so dead, if there's some opportunity there, even if there's an asymmetry sort of baked in against you, as long as you can get an edge over the X number of other followers, there still might be a good trade there. And as long as it's sort of, the tweet or the influencer participation or whatever is enough for some sort of momentum or volatility, that it's done its job and the rest is down to you. Let us know if we're wrong completely. I'm sure a lot of our, actually in our case, I'm not sure at all, but perhaps some of our audience are on-chain wizards of sorts who are tracking these narratives closely and influencer coins and influencer promoted projects and just in general are playing low caps and mid caps. If you are, we'd appreciate a comment. Let us know what we're missing, and maybe we can take a look on Dex Screener or click around next time. Although we'll get accused of pump and dumping, and that'll just be the funniest thing ever. So maybe not. Should we do some news, Don? Because I really don't. How much water can we squeeze from this 29K 1900?
There's nothing more to talk about. Yeah.
Cool. Let's do some headlines. That's the annoying part as well. Like, there's no shortage of headlines, but absolute shortage of volatility. So some kind of divergence there. SEC asks for new comments about ARK Bitcoin ETF in apparent delay. So this is, I think, fairly standard procedure. Even a lot of the comments, a lot of the sort of requests for comments are copy pasted. I don't think the market is surprised by the ARK Invest delay. I really think at this point, and let me know if you think this is really stupid, but the most market moving ETF application and the one viewed with the highest probability and as the ultimate juror as to whether the others are going to work or not is the BlackRock ETF. So I think any volatility that that was the precursor to volatility, and so I think at this point, as far in the ETF arena at least, it's either going to be BlackRock approval, delay, or denial that gets us going, or it's going to be the Grayscale suing SEC case resolution that gets us going as well, because that also has BlackRock implications. So I think at this point, because so many of these ETFs have been filed and BlackRock wasn't early by any means, I think the market's going to be more or less agnostic when it comes to the others and is happy, or at least pricing in delays. And it's really going to be the big boys that move this thing at this point. Not every single bit of ETF news is going to be market moving. But yeah, delay here and usual 35-day period to leave back some comments. So yeah, have you been thinking about the odds, your mental odds at least, when it comes to BlackRock ETF? Or is it at this point, are you sort of just following the Bloomberg guys and they don't really care?
Yeah, I'm checked out.
You're checked out. Yeah, I've got ETF fatigue at this point as well. Like, I still think it's going to be really important. But I feel like we're past the stage of news, rumors, and is the speculation of approval, denial, rejection priced in? I feel like we've seen all the hand waving at this point, and the only thing that's going to move this market is resolution one way or another. So I guess we have to wait for that. So that's your dose of ETF news. Binance Labs commits $5 million to invest in Curve DAO tokens, and as part of the collaboration, Curve Finance will deploy to BNB chain. We kind of talked about, apparently we talked pretty poorly about Curve and what actually happened when we described the incidents, which is completely believable given we're not huge DeFi guys. So apologies if any of that was materially misrepresented. I think the trading insights there were still interesting, but in terms of what actually happened, I'm sure we fucked it up. So apologies there. But as far as trading goes, this feels like a pretty good trade from Binance Labs, don't you think? They're essentially scooping up, a distressed asset and committed this sort of line of credit, injection of funds, whatever. And now they get to take one of the, still large premier DeFi protocols and add it as a nice little sticker to BNB chain. So good for them. I wonder if we see a lot of these, lenders of last resort when it came to the Curve fiasco, cashing in favors down the line. But this type of quid pro quo stuff is rather expected, I think.
Yeah, I just want to see what happens if Curve goes to 0.4.
Oh God!
It's like I don't know. Like I don't know why anyone, besides like the bigger guys, would buy this, right? Because it's pretty clear that you're going to be exit liquidity. So like I just don't get why you want to get an allocation in this thing. That there's a bunch of people with that bought for 0.4, right? And it's not like the tokens, at least to my understanding, are like completely locked. They might have changed that actually. Like I haven't been looking.
People have different agreements. That's the thing, based on how much they contributed and how early they came in to help good old Curve lad. So
yeah, because at the start it was just a gentleman's agreement that they wouldn't dump, right?
Yes.
But like, what happens if it's still just a gentleman agreement and the market kind of goes to shit? Like, does that gentleman agreement go out the window too? Because as you can see right now, like the ethics go down with price / with volatility, right? So if this goes down, what's gonna happen? I don't know. Like I legit, even when we talked about it last time, I said like I don't understand why anyone would want to have a piece of this. I think there's, even if you wanna like have DeFi or whatever exposure, I think there's better places to go than Curve. I think that's like cursed now, but could be wrong on that front. Don't really care too much how it ends up, but like just from an observer kind of standpoint, I'd be very, very curious how it's going to trade at 0.4. Just, are they going to dump? Are they going to double down? I don't think anyone would double down. So it's kind of like, because if you buy something for below market rate, right, you do it. So besides like the Binance news that we just talked about, if you do it as like a private kind of person, and I've seen a bunch of like Justin Sun got involved, what is called Mashi Big Brother or whatever,
Yes.
the NFT guy.
The cream guy, NFT guy.
Yeah, exactly. Like has flawless morals anyway, right? Like from what we've been seeing in the last few months. So yeah, I don't know. Like I'm just curious how that's gonna go, but I wouldn't want to be someone that holds with these people. Don't really think it makes much sense.
To be fair, it was quite funny. There was a Twitter space on Sunday I was participating in, and Thicky made the same point, being like, "Oh, there are some people there with, as far as the moral spectrum goes, could be closer to one side than the other." And Machi was in the listeners and started spamming reacts, and then we brought him up and had quite a fun conversation.
Oh yeah.
So maybe he's gonna comment here and say, "Bring me on Casual Friday, I'll fuck you up." So that would be wonderful.
Yes.
Polygon-based Utes NFTs to migrate to Ethereum return $3 million grant. Did you see this? Yeah, honestly, NFTs have been struggling, I think, a fair bit.
From they've
my
been
understanding.
terrible.
Yeah, it's been.
I mean, Bored Apes are back at 30 ETH floor now.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
you might have to buy one soon and like lose in USD or whatever it is you do every time you buy Bored Apes.
Oh, dude, I don't know. It's a tough one. Like especially with Bored Apes, like the Bored Apes people. Like there's been too many that are just dumb, right? Like to me, and I don't want to insult anyone that's like a part of that community.
Don's like, I'm not racist, but
no. But like the thing is, if you're part of a community, right, and like 90% of the people that are public out there are doing dumb shit, you're gonna look dumb just because you're in that community, and that's kind of what I've been seeing with the Bored Apes. Like it's more of a laughing stock now than like a status symbol. So I'm just probably not gonna buy. In general, NFTs is quite tough because volume's been even worse than what we have in crypto. So unless we get like a massive Bitcoin run towards like 60K, where I could see myself just dabble in NFTs again,
top.
Yeah, I'm struggling, but I'm terrible at buying and selling NFTs. Like I've made money overall, but if I never bought them and just was trading ETH instead, I would have made more. So I didn't actually make money in my head anyway because
yeah.
I lost.
Up in USD doesn't count.
Yeah, it's just
classic.
Doesn't.
Yeah, this also just feels like the whole Matic BizDev team hype was insane because they were signing so many deals and agreements, and naturally because crypto is sort of cyclical and there's a lag effect, they essentially seems like overextended a little bit. This isn't Matic's fault per se, but clearly from a traction point of view, it's really hard to get away from ETH. You can make sort of alt chain arguments much more easily when there are new people around and more people around in general, right? Like especially if ETH gets expensive, plus new people join the space who don't have that affinity towards one chain or over another and don't have like an ideological leaning, it's much easier to convert them, which I think part of the reason Solana did well, right? Because new participants tend to be more chain agnostic than not. It's really the first chain that makes the money that essentially gets their loyalty. But in a place like this where opinions are very consolidated and there are no new inflows and people sort of know what's up and there isn't that excess, I'm not surprised to see value converging to the tried and tested more so than the speculative and experimental. So we'll see. I'm also useless at NFTs. I think I just in the last cycle more or less lost 100K and just forgot they exist. So
yeah. I mean, I last time I bought NFTs, right? Like I wanted to buy a bunch of punks, and then
you bought Trumps instead.
No. It actually started off even differently. Like I wanted to buy punks, and then I was talking with Loomdot, and he was like, I think you should be buying Bored Apes." And I was like, "Okay." I mean, I'm not too into the NFT space. I'm just gonna buy the apes, and then punks doubled, and Bored Apes just went down. So I was like, well, and I think it's still the same for me. Like the punk community seems decent, and those people, like just the whole vibe around it is so much better. So if I was buying a high profile, like interesting NFT, I think be punks.
I'd be buying the top on whatever the scam of the day is, apparently. Also, I just really like and admire people who sit through Casual Friday over the last couple of months, especially because we sit here, you basically have to be tuning in and saying, okay, BTC has moved 1 to 4%. I wonder what the guys who only look at like BTC and ETH are going to say about this 1 to 4% move for an hour and a half. And then spend the rest of the show saying how they don't know shit about NFTs, don't know shit about on-chain, don't know shit about macro, don't know shit about the tech, but I'm just going to listen to them. So if that's you, thank you. I would say we'll broaden our horizons, but that's a lie, and it's not happening. Apologies there.
That's what we tell ourselves before you fall asleep, and then the next morning it's forgotten.
I woke up, yeah. Just like when I think she texted me back, then I wake up. Yep. SEC says it will appeal partial defeat in case against Ripple Labs. This is unsurprising. You and I kind of discussed, I don't know if it was on Casual Friday or in one of our single weekly DMs we sent to each other outside of the show, but the decision seemed a bit arse backwards, or certainly controversial if you want to take a more charitable view. And it seems like the SEC agrees, which is not surprising. Thankfully, well, not really thankfully, I was going to say this stuff takes a while to sort of percolate through the legal system, but the effect that has is it leaves a lot of these tokens and the US side of crypto in regulatory limbo. Because you might think, oh, well, this Taurus decision is actually a massive win, and we saw a lot of exchanges directly act on that ruling by relisting XRP and other assets. But then if that gets overturned on appeal, then you're sort of right back where you started. Maybe even worse if there's like a harsher precedent set by a higher court. Yep. So, I mean, to me, this is actually another form of... Okay, it's not another form of SEC incompetence, but I guess just another poor reflection on the regulatory environment as a whole. You can have a futures ETF which underperforms the asset itself because of the rollover cost. There's no clear regulatory environment for securities. SEC is suing businesses that tried to adhere, like Kraken, Coinbase, and people actually making an effort, while all the volume goes on, offshore, not on chain. I guess that can be the same thing, but it's just a total clusterfuck, really. So more of that, but I personally wouldn't be surprised to see if this decision gets overturned. But there's a lot of waiting to do before that becomes even sort of remotely relevant. And fuck, it didn't even help us break out of 30K. So what good is this decision in the first place?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that it didn't.
I know,
and
yeah.
I mean, XRP did exactly what we wanted it to, right? Like it basically went exactly to resistance and then dumped. But honestly, you would want to have had more, right? Like the XRP case, you win that. I mean, if crypto was still trading like the good old days, like XRP would have gone up 5x. Instead, it basically doubled, which is still good, but yeah, a little bit disappointing. XRP USD is actually one of the few charts, like if you just ignore everything else, that is at an interesting point, because it's basically trading at 0.6 support on the weekly time frame.
Sure, yeah.
But if that goes, yeah, that looks horrendous, right? Almost like if that 0.6%, 0.6 support goes, it almost looks as bad as Litecoin does, which is quite bad.
I mean, the market just hasn't caught on that this thing had a halving. There's so much less supply. Why is it dumping? I will never understand.
Yep.
Yeah, that was
just order.
how inefficient is this thing?
Yeah, but if the moment this happens to Bitcoin, people are gonna lose their minds. But
you're gonna FUD the Bitcoin halving as well? Here we go.
Oh yeah. At some point, Bitcoin is gonna run out of luck to have the halving in conjunction or like in general, like with something else that actually catalyzes the move.
I can't wait for Twitter debates on that sort of.
The thing is, like, I don't even want to talk about it because people are just so certain of their viewpoint that I'm just like, fuck it, it's just not worth discussing. I don't care enough to be the person that argues it, and I don't even care enough to entertain the whole argument. I just, like, for me, it's a little bit of an odd one, like when people are like, oh, Bitcoin halving and then it goes up. Technically true, but I think the reason why, and now I'm making the argument, the reason why it's going up is because Bitcoin just generally went up. Like Bitcoin generally over time goes up. So if you make the argument that it's the halving, you can make it, and there's enough kind of soft evidence there that you can find, but also like Bitcoin just generally went up.
Do you think it's a spurious correlation?
Yeah.
Really? That's interesting. I'd be willing to argue that the inflows that come as a result of speculation on the halving may have a material market impact, but it's not the actual halving event itself with the reduced supply that follows up that is the sort of modulator of price. So I'm willing to give it some weight for a narrative that smart traders will allocate to on the assumption that the dumb ones will pile in later, similar to the Litecoin one. But I put much less stock in the, well, look, the actual emissions have gone down and that event on that day is bullish. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, the thing is, like, it might have an impact over like 2, 3, 4 years, but I don't think it has an impact in like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months after the halving. The only reason why it has had, like you said, is people speculating.
So if you take the halving as the midpoint, I think the pre-halving period is where you can make coherent halving as bullish arguments. I think post-halving, those kind of 6 months or whatever is where that argument is much harder to make.
I think in general, like, Litecoin is just a very good example. Like, legit, like, Litecoin had a halving, and now look at price. And it's not like this is like, oh, but Litecoin is so different from Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin is bigger, right? And Bitcoin actually has people interested in it. But like the fundamental of a halving doesn't change, right?
Sure.
Like, it's the same thing. And Litecoin went down. Why is that? Because people traded it based on hype.
Okay, so DonAlt prediction on the halving, Bitcoin's going to go down 30%. You heard it here first.
No, I think in general, like, it's big enough and it's been holding on long enough that it's not going to dump necessarily. But I think there's going to be a time, if not this halving, but I think it will be this halving, where people are going to be massively surprised by the lack of upside after the halving. And I think actually
that's reasonable.
It's more likely to be this halving than any other. I just think we're going to get a halving and we're not going to have price move. And we might have price move a year or two afterwards, or like whatever, or after the dump. Like maybe it actually dumps into the halving or after the halving. Wouldn't be surprised by that either. I think the halving is going to kick in, as in like it's actually going to do a little bit down the road. But yeah,
your best halving bets end up being either pre-halving narratively or significantly post-halving once we churn through the change in supply emissions.
Yes.
And the sell the news shit has happened.
Okay. Yeah, perfectly said. But it obviously depends. It obviously depends whether we actually get like a volume uptick or not, right? Sure. Because if there's actually interest again in just the crypto markets as a whole, maybe you get a little bit more of a move. If it stays like it is right now, I'd be very shocked if we actually get any significant halving move that isn't necessarily like faded or just fades out relatively fast.
Well, there you go. You heard it here first. Probably put halving in the title or something. Why not? Derivatives exchange Bybit launches wealth management. Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So to start, the firm is offering so-called fund pools, which will provide users with a 4.5% APR on deposited USDT. In an FAQ describing the new business, Bybit said that all funds are kept within its platform whilst being managed by trusted third parties. So I still think, as tempting, and we're going to see more exchanges do this, sort of bring out vaults and wealth management stuff and basically mechanisms that incentivize you to keep your funds on the exchange. I think even if you choose to use those services, you should think of it in terms of a trade, right? Like how much counterparty risk do I want to take on for, this percent APR or these expected returns or this DCA model or whatever. I think just because it comes with the cushy convenience of like, oh, it's wealth management, oh, it's like a bank, it'll do these things for me, I have so many convenient options. I think you have to just put your counterparty risk hat on first and your trader brain on and see it as just another trade. Because you still have funds exposed on the platform and you're still incurring counterparty risks. Naturally, you have to consider the other side of the equation. If I'm tying up my capital, what is the upside? And is the upside justified relative to the risk of losing some of all of those funds? I just feel like a lot of people, when it comes to specifically perps trading, they understand the idea of using leverage and counterparty risk and all that type of stuff. But when it comes to earn type products and everything else, their brain turns off and they just sort of sink into savings account mode. And I think you should always be in the first mode, not in the second one.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a shitty product, not gonna lie.
I mean, this
like,
is just the first one, so I don't know. Maybe there's more cool stuff coming.
because the thing is, like, they're gonna give you TradFi returns because that's literally TradFi returns. So you can have your money on a crypto exchange, which in general, crypto exchanges tend to just kind of lose your money eventually, like over enough, like a broad enough time horizon, there's a chance that it blows up. So basically, you're taking on extra risk for returns that are outsized in a TradFi world. Seems a little bit dumb to me, like especially given how easy it is to off and on ramp nowadays. Like it is not easy in the sense that that once you kind of have to set it up first, right? But once you've set it up, and I mean, I think most sophisticated actors have started setting up like proper on and off off ramps or / ways to kind of do that. Like, why bother? I don't get the point. Especially if you want to hold it for longer, right? Short term, whatever. Like if you have your money there and you're like, I don't like the current volatility, whatever, I'm just gonna park it for 3 months. But even then, like for 3 months, I would go through the trouble and withdraw it from the exchange, right? Like I don't see the point in having my money on an exchange for that long. If I can just put it somewhere else that isn't as risky.
Yeah, it's like when a lot of, I mean, for a significant period of time, the DeFi return on stablecoins was lower than what you'd get on treasuries, which is insane, right? You're taking on DeFi counterparty risk to get less money than you would from, the US government or whatever. So there's also, you need to anchor it to the real world as well.
Yeah, as long as you can off and off,
Yes.
off and on ramp, because a bunch of people cannot. I mean, apparently a lot of people do illegal shit. Like whenever I talk about taxes or whatever, like 90% of my comments are coming out and they're like, "Oh, you're paying taxes? You're such a moron." And I'm like, okay, fair enough. This is the crypto space after all, I guess. This is something that I find almost like makes me laugh every single time, because people are like, oh, like governments around the world are treating us so unfairly, and then someone posts about taxes and 90% of the comments are like, haha, you're such an idiot for paying taxes, right? Like it kind of makes sense that we have so much scrutiny in crypto if every second like, and that's being charitable person in crypto is just kind of like, oh, why are you paying taxes?
Okay,
right?
okay. I understand the philosophical juxtaposition, but I don't think it's been justifiably weaponized, right? So when Elizabeth Warren, for example, comes out and talks about the crypto tax loophole type of thing, like there is no crypto tax loophole per se.
That's bullshit. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, sentiment-wise, I agree with you, but I feel like they sort of weaponize a bogeyman that's not really there.
Oh, I think
yeah, go on.
I think they don't understand actually what they're talking about.
Oh,
like if they would actually understand what they were talking about, they would see that it's much worse.
Oh my god, you Fed. I get it now. You've got the Fed angle. Like, no, Miss Warren, it's so much worse than you think. Look at all these exchanges and people, making 10 million and never withdrawing it and using earn products and crypto credit cards. Oh my god, this is how I make it. Some sort of whistleblower program. Okay, we need to cut this part of the show out. I totally get where you're coming from now, Don. Thank you. Say less. Let's move on to the next piece of news. PayPal. Oh god, this is the PayPal stablecoin. I don't have anything to say about this. PayPal just kind of phases in and out of crypto. And PayPal is, I don't see them as a good company, if that makes sense. Their censorship is, I mean, maybe they are a good company just because of the amount of censorship they implemented, the sheer numbers of Bitcoiners that created. Maybe we should say thank you for that reason. I guess from a trading markets point of view, we already covered it. No market impact from that. I think we had maybe a bit of a move and they got faded, so that sucks. But yeah, stablecoin wars in general and stablecoin dominance, I think the market still sees that as an open fight. USDC market cap's been bleeding. Tether is making money hand over fist, or whatever the idiom is. Yeah, and CZ is just launching FD after BUSD got shut down and wants a piece of that pie with all sorts of zero feed trading stuff. So it's all over the place, mate.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's interested, but I think even Tether is losing market cap, no?
I think so, yeah. Recently, I think I saw a chart.
Yeah, I think like in general, like stablecoins are going down significantly, and it only
Everyone's
makes
fucking
sense.
off, right?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? If you get more money in the TradFi world, like people are gonna also opt that, right?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
like if you have enough liquidity, like that's especially given this was for a long time, this was present where you had like basically no yields in crypto, and then you had like 4 or 5% in the TradFi world. Like that just makes sense to arb, right? If you can, even if you're not really like off ramping, whatever, just the arb trade is interesting. But a lot of people also just fucked off, I think.
It's both of those things for sure.
Yeah.
Also, to be clear, just because I forgot to make this point on the wealth management thing, a lot of the time that they'll offer delta neutral strategies or whatever, and it may sound convenient, but okay, I get to park my money in this exchange, and they will do the earn part for me. But most of the scalable delta neutral strategies that they run are super fucking simple because they need to be in order for you to pack on a lot of size for those trades. So it's like BTC quarterly futures basis ARB, for example, right?
Yep.
Like you can run that kind of stuff yourself, fully in your control without having to incur the same amount of counterparty risk. So most of the delta neutral stuff, especially the ones run at scale, end up being fairly easy trades. But also the scary part is with those easy trades, when that when the bases when the premiums disappear, everyone gets shafted, which is what we saw with GBTC. Which is why I didn't touch that kind of stuff personally. But if the market, especially in like an uptrend bullish environment where just everyone wants to be long and there aren't enough dollars to go around, ironically, people want to directionally trade the most in those environments, which makes sense. But the lowest risk will come from just parking a ton of money into those ARBs, and that's not risk free, but certainly also a strategy that's only afforded by the bull market and not when real rates are on the fucking floor. So or yields rather.
And I think if it kind of continues this whole like tightening cycle, like it's just going to be interesting to see how much liquidity can actually flow out of crypto, right? Because it's a lot. It's been a lot, and it continues to be a lot. And if this kind of whole situation continues, like the less stablecoins we have, the less pumpermentals we have, right? Like that's a good thing to have a lot of stablecoins floating around, because that's a bunch of people that can deploy easily and are willing to deploy more likely than not. The less we have, the more difficult it becomes.
That's why we're all on chain now. You don't need much money to move this shit around. We can't afford the big caps anymore, Don. We don't have enough money, so we have to go for the low and mid caps.
Yep.
On that jovial note, I think we'll wrap up. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a like on the video. Leave us a comment if you have things to say. I tried to fix my echo. We had quite a funny start to this show that I won't disclose, but yeah, some angry tech problems is what I'll leave you with. But thank you for watching. The show is as always brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. Please take heed of all the points we make about counterparty risk. But if you want to explore their transparency dashboard or their execution dashboard, all that stuff and a longer form article there is linked below. We tried our best. I mean, these shows are quite tricky to make in these market conditions, but thank you for sticking by us. I kind of floated the idea, Don, of doing some educational stuff, at least on Monday markets and maybe on Casual Friday. So we'll have a chat about that to see if there's something interesting we can talk about. If you have ideas or topics you want for educational content, be it trading related, investing related, how we look at altcoins, whatever, just again, leave us a comment and we'll look through those thoroughly as we do every week. Or as I do. Don just logs out of Google Meets and never speaks to me. But I stay invested and up to date with this stuff. So, I'm your real friend.
Is that how it
is? Okay, enough rambling. I hope you'll have an excellent weekend, and we'll see you next week for 29K BTC. Goodbye.
Bye.